There's been a lot of videos coming up lately on cam and lifter failures, and some of your favorite channels have had videos kind of like this.
This is what happens when you roll the dice. Right. The cam lobe matches that.
Or like this.
Bad lifter, in case you have any new here, she junk.
Or like this.
This is interesting. 3 different failures of different flavors.
And there's many other videos out there on cam failures and lifters.
And we're having problems with soft lifters, the bottom's wiping out in 15 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour.
So, what's going on?
Wrong. Now, I honestly believe what happened was this lifter failed and ate the camshaft. There's all sorts of stuff all over the internet. Lifters are failing left and right, and that's exactly what I think happened here.
So I really want to emphasize that I am not any kind of expert. I'm kind of a regular guy, just like you. You know, as you know, we're doing the Piggy Bank Horsepower Challenge. A group of us are doing some Mopar engine builds, trying to make as much horsepower as we can on the tightest budget that we can. And one thing around the corner is going to be the camshaft. I've been seeing videos of these cam failures and lifter failures, and you know, it's kind of scary. And so before I got to that point, I've been trying to watch a lot of videos on the topic.
There's been a lot of issues with flat tap lifters lately.
Now, this is usually when you get a cam failure, is when you get cocky and you say, I've never had a cam failure.
I thought, it's user error. It's always user error when something screws up in my mind until I do it myself.
I've only had one lifter fail on me once. It wasn't during break-in. It was long after break-in on a small block Mopar. I feel like my current break-in procedure and materials I use is very robust. I haven't had a failure with it, but in the process of doing, you know, all of this research, I've decided to change my cam break-in procedure and try to stack the odds in my favor. And I think this new cam break-in procedure I'm going to use, or materials I'm going to use, really it's not so much the procedure that's going to change. It's going to be the materials, namely the oil and assembly lube. In my quest of watching a bunch of YouTube channels from what I consider experts, I feel like I'm upping my game and I'm adding insurance to my policy for success, okay? I wanted to kind of talk about or have a discussion around what is the root cause of these cam and lifter failures. Well, the way I see it, there's 4 potential problems. So problem number 1, which, and I'm going to go from probably the least likely to the most likely, but problem number 1 is the hardness of the cam or lifters. I think that what you're seeing out there in the YouTube world and all these cam failures is, I think you're seeing a combination of sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's this, and sometimes it's that. So best I can tell, there's opportunity for any one of these root causes that could contribute to cam failure. Let's go over what the most likely root causes that I've gathered from watching videos from the experts, okay? Number 1, hardness. Best I can tell, there's like only 2 core manufacturers out there that basically make cam cores for everybody, okay? Now there may be some cheaper cam cores made in China or something like that.
But one thing that I hear all the time is China cam cores, China cam cores. There may be some, but all of the cam grinders that I've seen any cams from, all the cores come from CWC Textron in Michigan.
I can tell you that all of these are sourced here from the U.S. because I know what brands each one of these were and why they failed. At least we can make a good assumption of why they failed. Cam cores are primarily made by 2 sources, and both of those are in Michigan. And I will tell you that it's probably not the cam cores that are suffering the problems.
And how you can know that, you will see their logo, CWC, cast into the spool. And every one of these cams are all American made. And I haven't seen one any other way. So we can kind of dispel that.
Well, but I can tell you that everything that you see here on my benchtop is 100% made in the U.S.
If you want to increase the odds of having success, I would avoid getting those cheap camshafts that are, we'll call them generic brands, okay? Generic brands, or they might be branded under parts distributor or something like that. I would stay away from those. Now, I'm not saying all of those cams are bad. I don't know. But I think the first insurance policy is stay away from those cheap cams and let's stick to name brand camshafts, okay?
There's a lot of Chinesium stuff out there, and there are lifters coming from China, but there's pretty much this big controversy over what's causing this camshaft failure thing. So a lot of them are saying it's the hardness of the lifter. A lot of them are saying it's the hardness of the camshaft.
One of the guys that I like to watch on YouTube I've recently discovered is Pal Machining, or Pal Machine. He actually went through went through several camshafts. Some had failures, and he did hardness checks, and he checked some lifters, and it looks like, hardness is not the issue.
So that cam is 46. So it's 46 Rockwell on the C scale, which is, that's pretty normal. That's what we see. And it killed a couple of lobes. That's one of our Thunder Bomber cams that had they had some fuel issues and spun it over for half a day, so they wiped all the lube off. 53. So that's really good. This cam right here is a FE Ford. The taper looks good. Nothing wrong with the cam. You can see CWC right there. But this one was ground by comp. But it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And I'm sure it'll test fine. Yeah, and it's sitting right on 50. From what I've seen, anything over 45 is pretty good.
And of course, along with camshaft hardness, there's lifter hardness to consider. But Pal also did a bunch of hardness checks on a whole bunch of different lifters, including cheap Chinese lifters, and they all came out pretty good.
This is a Delphi lifter. This is a brand new China eBay special hydraulic lifter set. I think they were $45 or something. It's just super cheap. And this is a import lifter that we sell with a hard foot, a Stellite foot, and we've had really good success with them. And we'll check all three of these. And I don't have them anymore, but I had some solid, $300 a set oil hole lifters. But I checked those too, and actually they were the softest out of the pile. The most expensive ones were the softest. But we're going to check these and see what they say. So we'll start with the factory GM. All right, so that lifter is 58. All right, we'll do our import lifter that we sell with the hard foot like the Delphi. And it is dead on 58 also. And then the China eBay. And that one's just right at 58. It's not quite 58. And I got one more. I think this is a Melling. And that one's 52. So it's the softest of the pile. Anything over 50 should be fine. And the same thing with the cams. We see stuff high 40s up, and we just rarely have any problems. Whatever the problem is, it's not hardness.
So another potential issue is geometry or the grind on the camshaft and or the lifter.
But the way that this works is the lobe is tapered to one side. The lifter is tapered as well, and when that lobe gets against that, it tends to make the lifter want to spin, which acts like a bearing. So it's not just sitting there rubbing it going up and down, because that will make one go flat. That's when a cam goes flat. One of the things you need to do is check the taper in the lifter. If the lifter has no taper in it, send them back. But there again, buy lifters from a good company.
You have to have a taper on the cam lobe, and you have to have a crown on the lifter. And what that does is that basically promotes rotation of the lifter. And so if you have a flat cam lobe, you're not going to get the rotation that you need, and that can lead to cam failure.
I do know that if the camshaft doesn't have enough taper in it and the lifter doesn't have enough taper in it, the cam's going to go flat, no matter how much zinc you put in it, no matter what.
And so this is another customer that's got a big block Buick, And he's put 3 of these in, and they've all died on break-in. And it's probably got half the lobes gone. If you look at it, you don't see that wear line. You don't see that taper. And I mic'd this cam, and it has absolutely 0 lobe taper. All right, so that cam's 55, so that lobe is definitely good. This is a bad lobe. 47, so it's a little softer. So the heat, I'm sure the heat done it. You know, it was hard on day one, just the heat got to it. So this is a comp. It's just some kind of low lift rule deal. CWC right there. And this cam doesn't have any problems. And you can see, especially a cam that's been used, if you look, you can see the line. So you can see it's high over here. So that's the taper pushing it to the back of the engine. And that makes the lifter rotate. And so taper is a big deal. We don't see too many taper issues, but when you pull a used cam out and you see that and it's consistent down the cam, you know that the taper, the lobe was ground correctly with the right amount of taper. And so that one's 53 also.
How not only do you have to have taper in the camshaft lobe and in the lifter, they have to match each other, and they can't be too much. And you also have to have a straight lifter bore. Because
if these two are perfect and you have excessive lifter bore clearance, now the lifter rocks on an angle like this, and depending on these two numbers, it could help the problem or it can make it worse.
If you want to check a lifter, the way you check a lifter is you hold something flat, like a straight edge up to it, and it's going to be hard to see because there's no light behind me here, but you should be able to see light on the edges. It shouldn't, the bottom of that, you should be able to rock that back and forth, and it should have about, I don't know, 1.5 thousandths or so to 2 thousandths. You know, they can't have too much, but you want to check that. If you can hold something flat up against the light and see light on the edges, then you're probably good to go. If there's not a whole lot of light, you probably got an issue, and I have had some lifters that didn't have enough taper in them, and I sent them bastards back.
And if it's just ground incorrectly, maybe it's got too much taper, or maybe the crown in the lifter is just not a good surface to begin with. Those can all be contributing factors to failure.
I mean, that's 2.5. And we'll come over to the other side. And that's 2.5. And that's a little more than 2.5. And that's right on 2.5. So you see how much taper that's got. And like I say, that's just, it just doesn't need that much. So let's go over to the grinder, and then we're gonna face 1 or 2, and I'm gonna show you what they look like. I dichomed up the face just so you can have you know, you'll be able to visually see what's touching and what's not touching. But almost every set of lifters I grind have that problem. And so it's going to be hard to make that roll. And I mean, how can that work? So, but that ain't all the problems. There's more problems other than that. I mean, we got angles. We got the face ain't even flat or round. I mean, it's insane. But the next problem is the chamfer on the corner. Or the chamfer that they put on the lifter is a problem. And I'm going to show you why it's a problem. So the edge of the cam would just be touching one small part of the lifter, and so you have no load-bearing area.
It's decent, but you can tell it's got a much wider chamfer than this one does here. And that's a big difference. When you take even just that very minute surface area off, you're leaving out the workable area of that lifter onto the lobe. I've seen some of these that are horrible in the chamfer, and that is a real bad indication of a lifter that was not ground correctly, or to a manufacturer's spec that I won't say they don't know what they're doing, but it's a little confusing why they would put that much chamfer in it.
So who should you buy a camshaft from? I mean, you've got all these issues with our cam lobe taper and lifter taper, and I know what you shouldn't do is you should never buy the camshaft and the lifter separately based on everything that I've seen and heard.
That if you buy a Howard's camshaft, buy the Howard's lifters that go with it. Don't mix and match. They're designed to work together. If you're going to run a Howard's or an Isky or a Comp or whatever, Leonardi, it doesn't matter. Match the lifter to their cam and go with their recommendation. Don't switch brands. Don't run a Comp and then go, well, I can't get the Comp lifters or on back order. I found a set on the internet somewhere off eBay. I'll just run those. They're flat tapping lifters. They're fine. They're not. Don't. You're going to void your warranty for one, which could cause issues if you don't do this break-in properly. But also, two, with it, they're designed to work together. So don't cheat yourself out of it.
One camshaft brand might have 1.5 thou taper. Another camshaft brand might have 2 thou taper, and you mix the two, and they just don't mesh. They're not made for each other. They need to be the same.
Before you put it in the engine, before you lube it, before you do anything else, check the lobes. Make sure that you've got at least 2 thousandths or 3 thousandths of an inch taper on the lobe. Because without that, the lifter's not going to spin and it's just going to wear. Now,
Lobe taper is a big deal, and the crown on the lifter.
By the way, there's a lot of math involved in measuring that. So when you measure the taper across the cam lobe, that is greater distance. So you might have 2.5 thousandths of taper across the whole cam lobe. But when you're measuring the lifter, you're just measuring from the center to the edge, which is a shorter distance. So you might get 1.5 thousandths taper on the lifter, and the matching taper on the cam lobe might be 2.5 thousandths. What that math is exactly, I don't know. But I've just, keep that in mind. Just buy the sets together and probably get a name brand. It's a matter of who do you trust, right? Been seeing a lot of videos and been seeing a lot of criticism.
Whatever it is, it definitely won't be from a company that rhymes with stomp.
Everybody I talked to said, I hate to keep throwing Comp under the bus here, but they weren't the most helpful, and I feel like I did pay my money. I guess their lifters, the quality control, they're straight from China. They just slap them in a box, put a sticker on them, and send them out the door. That's what people have told me. That's what the machine shop said.
Are they the problem? I don't know. My gut tells me that it's the oil. When I get to the cam, buying the cam for the Junkyard Dog, our piggy bank horsepower engine build, one of the biggest aspects, or one of the biggest things I wanted to do was actually use a comp cam, and for two reasons. Number one, if oil is truly the issue, then there should be no problem with the comp cam. And if I can get a comp cam to break in and not have a failure, then that kind of helps support the idea that the problem is in the oil, assembly lube, or break-in oil, or whatever, and it's not in the camshaft itself. The other reason was, unfortunately, some of my favorite cams, because I just deal street cars, I just have street cars. I don't have race cars. But in the street car arena, I'm very happy with the Mopar Performance camshafts, or the direct connection camshafts from back in the day. Never had, I shouldn't say I've never had a problem. That one small block I had a problem with was a purple shaft. But other than that, I haven't had any problems with purple shaft cams. I feel confident in them, and unfortunately they don't make them anymore. They probably never made them to begin with. They probably had somebody else make them, and they just repackaged them as Mopar Performance, But at any rate, they don't make them anymore. You can't get a Mopar Performance purple shaft cam. But Comp Cams does make some nostalgia cams or vintage cams, and they make the 509 purple shaft camshaft with all of the grinds that the original 509 cam had. And in reality, the cam cores are the same cam cords. We've kind of already established that. So I really wanted to have the 509 cam put into this engine and a comp cam to prove the cam's not the problem, it's the oil. But, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure about that either.
I have had some trouble with some comp stuff, I'm not going to lie. They've always made it right, but I've heard horrible things about comp cam. Well, if you buy from a decent company, like I use Mike Jones, I use Bullet, I use Crower, and I use Isky. Those are pretty much the only cam companies I use because I know I'm going to get a good camshaft. I'm going to say Mike Jones cams. Now they're high, they're not cheap, but you get what you pay for, and he's going to grind you a camshaft that ain't going to go flat. He's not going to steer you wrong. Same thing with Bullet. Bullet's a good cam company, and Isky, if I was going to buy an off-the-shelf cam today, right now, it would be an Isky cam. That's my 2 cents. Now, I'm not bashing any of the other cam companies, but I have had some issues with some Howard's cams and some Howard's lifters, to the point to where I just quit buying the stuff because I couldn't get them to make it right.
Okay, so far we've talked about hardness. It's probably the least likely of root causes. And we talked about geometry, which has a high probability of being a root cause. Whether it is, there's not enough taper, there's no taper, there's the incorrect taper, there's lifter bore, slop, whatever the reason is, one of those could be a root cause. The third root cause I want to talk about is lifter rotation. I want to spend a little time talking about that because I think it could give you a false negative.
And one of the things he showed in his video was a stripe across the face of the lifter that was left by the cam lobe. And that told me everything I needed to know. That there wasn't sufficient either crown in the lifter or taper on the lobe to keep that lifter spinning.
So here's the problem. You could have an issue where the lifter stops rotating in the engine. As a result, you're going to get a cam failure. That lobe and that lifter are going to both die. Now, but I've seen guys take their engines apart and then they go, but look, I've got this straight grind mark going across the lifter. That means the lifter was not rotating. Although that's true, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the root cause. Because remember, what rotates the lifter is the taper between the crown on the lifter and the taper in the cam lobe. So once you start having catastrophic failure, for some other root cause, the probability of the taper going away and the lobe and lifter becoming flat against each other is going to be so high that it's very likely the lifter is going to stop rotating. So if you see that happen, I don't think you can 100% say for sure that the lifter stopped rotating and therefore caused the failure. It may be true, but I think that your odds of the lifter, once you start having catastrophic failure between the lifter and lobe, the odds of the lifter no longer rotating go sky high. And I think it's going to stop rotating. It's going to put a big grind mark in there. So just keep that in mind. In my opinion, this is my opinion, the likelihood of those root causes, I think lifter rotation is also very extremely low as far as root causes go. What I think has the highest probability or the highest percentage of root cause is the oil. And, and like I said, I'm no expert. I could be wrong on this, but it seems to me that these problems did not exist in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, and probably the first half of the 80s, right? I think these problems started to come around the time, emission standards started to skyrocket and the manufacturers started switching over to roller cams and high detergent oils with no zinc in the oil. All of a sudden, this is a common problem, losing cams and cam lobes. Is oil the problem?
The number one thing is our oil. They took the zinc out of our oil.
There was a video not too long ago about a Canadian YouTuber. He's got a ton of subscribers. Seems like a pretty good guy. He's built a lot of stuff, but had a big block that he put together and it failed. Well, it was pretty evident as I watched the video of the reasons why he was experiencing the failure that he got.
So there's a bunch of questions in the comments. We'll just address those real quick. What kind of oil did I use? I used 1540. I believe it was Rotella or Mobil. I don't remember what I had, but
and one of them was the oil. A popular thing is, I'll just use diesel oil. It's got a ton of zinc in it. It'll be fine. They used to have a lot of zinc in it. They don't any longer. The EPA changed that API that they follow for the recipe, and they can't include as much zinc in it anymore. So it doesn't have enough zinc. But the other side of that is when you take an off-the-shelf oil of anything and say, okay, well, I'll just go grab 5-6 quarts of whatever at my local auto parts store, and I'll add a zinc additive in there, and it'll be just fine for my everyday oil.
Was there zinc in the oil? I had the additive.
So with zinc additives, it turns out it's extremely complicated, and it's not as simple as just pouring it into your engine and boom, you've got zinc in your oil. I thought what do? You just buy this zinc additive, you pour it in the engine and you're good? Turns out, no, it does not just blend with oil, and here's why.
There's two things that happen with that. What happens is because zinc is a certain type of material, I believe it's an acid, and the detergent packages that are in a regular API oil or a regular engine oil is a base, they fight each other. The detergent sees the zinc as a negative and it tries to eliminate it. It wipes it off the cam as quick as possible. Those materials that make up a additive package for the detergent side of a regular engine oil will fight it. Oil is blended in a certain order and at a certain temperature. So they may start with the base oil and then they may add in one additive and then add in another and add in another. And the temperature may change because they have to be able to mix together. And if you don't add them at a certain order and a certain temperature, they don't blend together. So when you take this oil and you dump in 6 quarts and you throw in your zinc additive and maybe you cycle it through with the oil pump and try to get it mixed up, it's not going to mix. It has to reach a certain temperature before it mixes.
You need to understand that there is like a lot of layers to this cake, and number one, you just can't use regular old engine oil when you're breaking in an engine. You have to use break-in oil, okay? And additive is only good with...
There's also the additives. The additives, several different ones, like you've got the Lucas TB Zinc Plus. I've had some success with this, but don't try to use this with just a regular old conventional oil, because this is an additive. This is not an oil that's designed for flat tap break-in. This is just an additive to put the zinc in the oil. And quite frankly, after I took a pretty good seminar on oil and why I don't recommend using this unless it's the only thing you can find, but use it with another good oil like VR1 or something, Joe Gibbs oil or something.
I always found it curious that there just doesn't seem to be a lot of information on oil, or at least there hasn't been a lot of information on oil in the past, But fortunately with YouTube, there's a lot of information out there at your fingertips, but you do have to dig for it. And oil is probably one of the most important aspects to an engine's survival, and yet the information on oil is not common knowledge, and it's not at our fingertips. It should be the one thing we all know about and understand more than anything else about an engine. It's like this some top secret thing that nobody knows about, and then somebody gets some sort of hack like, hey, use diesel oil, it's got tons of zinc in it, and then the EPA comes along and makes changes, and now diesel oil doesn't have any zinc in it anymore, but nobody told anybody. So, does everybody know that? I don't know. I didn't know that. I keep hearing that from people. Buy diesel oil, it's got zinc in it, And then I go to the store and I'm looking at the label and on the front and the back, and I don't see anything about zinc. So, it's like, I don't know. So, what oil should we be using? I've been using Royal Purple. I don't have any issue with it. But one of the names or brands that I keep seeing come up with all of the professionals, the guys I consider professional or hold in high regard, trustworthy, they work at machine shops or they own machine shops, they're building engines a lot. Seems to me that Joe Gibbs, which is what it used to be called and now it's called Driven, is the oil that keeps coming up. And specifically, you want to make sure you use the Driven break-in oil. I think that's, so that's what I'm planning on switching to. So I don't have any problems with Royal Purple. I've been successful with it, but it's another layer of an insurance policy, So if all the pros and all the big name guys, the guys that seem to know their stuff, are using the Driven break-in oil, then I'm thinking probably a good idea to do the same, So add a little more to my insurance policy,
I personally recommend Driven break-in oil. It's Driven BR for any flat tappet engine. This oil here is designed for breaking flat tappet camshafts, and there's some other ones out there too. But I've had very good success with the Driven BR break-in oil. That being said, after you get it broke in and you have a successful break-in, run run the Driven XP or VR1 or something that has zinc in it, or the cam will go flat.
So never, ever, ever. I know it's popular. I know it's easy. I know everyone out there sells a zinc additive that you can add to the oil, but please don't use it. Don't use a detergent oil in it. Get a specific break-in oil. Y'all know that I'm a big fan of the Driven Racing Oil. Always have been. As long as they're going to be around, I will always use that product. Driven had the first break-in oil in the market. This is a low detergent, so it doesn't wipe away all those all those properties that zinc has, and helps protect that engine during break-in. That process there of using an actual break-in oil will increase your chances of successful cam break-in tremendously. Once you get it broken in on a good break-in oil, also run an oil that's already been mixed. Don't mix an off-the-shelf oil with a zinc additive. Get an oil that is already pre-mixed. This GP1's a really nice one. It's a Pennsylvania grade crude. I believe they're the only manufacturer on the market that uses that. For you old school guys, that's the folks that came out of the product that came out of the Kendall facility back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, where those hot rodders insisted that oil helped create horsepower, and dyno testing has proven that here over the last couple of years. But anyway, oil is probably the biggest one. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes people make, but it's certainly not the only one.